Yep, I remembered how to do it. Welcome to the new IT. Welcome to the new IT in the house today. Brad, what's happening? What are we talking about? We got a powerful Bad A show today, right?
Yeah, I'm excited for today's show. I mean, I think we got two powerful guests that are joining us today. We've got Scott with Twilio, and we've got Phil from Amazon or AWS.
And they're all over the place. I mean, let's face it. These guys are all over. You guys are all over the internet, right? You don't have a home, do you? You just
we're more representing ourselves than any particular company,
right.
I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. I mean, these guys they're amazing. They're awesome. They have lots of passions around technology. So yeah, I mean, I think today's going to be a good show. Just getting to understand and learn more about their thoughts on technology and where it's going and what we can do with it.
Yeah, you guys have been around the tech space for a few days, right?
Just a few.
You know, I have to say, it was funny. The other day, I was hit up by somebody on LinkedIn, and they asked me and said, so how long have you been involved in technology? And I said, if I didn't say before you were born, I would at least say before there was an internet.
You were selling mainframes? Is that what was going on?
Yeah, well, I didn't sell them, but definitely was around them.
Yeah,
awesome.
That's awesome.
So why don't we just jump into it and maybe do a little bit of introductions. Scott, do you want to maybe introduce a little bit about yourself and a little bit more of your background, and then Phil, you can do the same.
Yeah.
Sure.
So Scott Lemon, been living up in Heber City, Utah since Novell moved me out to Utah. So
nice.
good long time ago. Good enough that I appreciate the appreciation in property value in the Heber Valley.
I bet.
So it's I'm definitely enjoying that. But right now, working as a principal solutions engineer for Twilio in their IoT business unit, and we basically enable connectivity for IoT devices. So that's everything from, telematics and trucking to all these scooters that people are renting out there to medical devices and a whole plethora of other things. But outside of that, I've been working in IoT for the last decade plus. Had a consulting company that I still have doing that, software consulting, doing enclosures for embedded devices. So just all sorts of things I play in research.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
Cool. Love it.
What about you, Phil? Let's get a little bit of your background. I know it's quite distinguished.
Yeah, so I'm currently a senior software development manager for Amazon Web Services in the Identity Group. I've only been doing that for a couple of months though, so I can't claim much there. But I've been all over the map. Probably my biggest thing is I'm the one of the founders and the organizer of Internet Identity Workshop, which has been going on for 18 years now, 2 meetings a year. So we're going to have our 35th meeting in November.
Awesome.
I wrote O'Reilly's digital identity book in 2005, and in January 2023, my second O'Reilly digital identity book will be out, and so I'm looking forward to that.
Nice. So when in November is that event, Phil?
It's November 15th through the 17th in Mountain View, California, at the Computer History Museum.
Awesome.
Cool.
So do you need to buy tickets, or how does that work? Can anybody just
exclusive
come and join, or what?
Yeah, you just if you just go to internetidentityworkshop.com, you can find links to the Eventbrite site.
Awesome. Well,
And
if anybody's interested in that, let's definitely get them out there.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, yeah. So let's start with our general questions. How are you guys using technology to be disruptors in your industries? I mean, Scott, it sounds like you're doing quite a bit. So that's kind of a loaded question for you. Phil, you tell me.
Yeah, and let's I would like to hear from your expertise what you think is a disruptor. Maybe not just what you guys are doing, but what you're seeing out there in the industry of technology as a disruptor. What do you guys think is going on? Let's get a little broad. I don't know. Unless you guys, you go as big or as little as you want to. Who wants to go first? Phil, do you want to go first since we heard from Scott first last time?
Yeah. So Scott and I probably will just kind of riff off each other a little bit, but I'm kind of stuck on identity, and I think that's actually one of the things that has the opportunity to disrupt. Whether it will or not, of course, is anyone's guess. But because identity is so foundational to almost everything that happens digitally, because we're not next to each other, right? We need to have some way of knowing who we're interacting with. Changing identity schemes, how we do identity, has a big impact. We're seeing some of that this week, right? I mean, Facebook had a miserable earnings call. Elon Musk buying Twitter. Those are two platforms that a lot of people have associated with how they build relationships online. And so, does that change? Are we going to build relationships differently in the future? I think so, but that's I think one of the big opportunities we have is to impact how we build online relationships by changing how our identity systems work.
I gotta ask, I just gotta throw it out there. Do you think that blockchain has a space there for that, or is that
I think it has a role, but I don't necessarily think it's a game changer. I mean, it's an implementation strategy, right? It's more important, I think, to think about what properties you want, and then there may be a role for blockchain once you determine what properties you want. But to start with blockchain because it's the cool thing, and then say, oh, how can I build something on top of this? I think that's the wrong approach.
There you go.
Yeah.
I like it.
What about you, Scott?
I think that from my perspective, I love all things IoT, Internet of Things. Mm-hmm. And I don't like connecting everything. There is a limit in my mind. I don't care about internet connected cat dishes so that you can monitor whether your cat is drinking properly during the day. But philosophically, I love the aspect of the internet, interacting and, with the physical world. And there's huge commercial applications, obviously, for that. If I think there's, when you asked about disrupting, the one aspect of Twilio that I've enjoyed in the IoT business unit is one of the things that we've done that is disruptive is being able to provide connectivity to cellular connected devices across 400 carriers worldwide with a single SIM card. And in the United States now, being able to do that for AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon, along with US Cellular, Alaska, Union Telecom, and a couple others. Meaning, you've got this device, like I've got a tracker that's in my car that I play around with. And when I'm driving from Utah up to see my son in Bozeman, Montana, this thing is jumping from carrier to carrier to carrier based on the connectivity it can get in different locations. And that's something you can't do with your cell phone. Like you're buying your cell phone from a carrier, you get their coverage map, and that's it. And so that's one thing in my mind that's kind of disruptive that I'm doing at Twilio.
Absolutely.
But, outside of that, I'm doing a lot of experimentation with embedded devices, embedded temperature sensors, working with a variety of different kinds of just embedded devices. And to me, that is a realm that is evolving so rapidly with players that most people have never heard of. There's a company out of China called Espressif that's doing these small microcontrollers, the ESP8266, the ESP32, that are these, amazing Bluetooth, Wi-Fi capable programmable modules for a couple of bucks. And so many things being built on them, and you just aren't even aware of it. And those are things that to me are really starting to bubble up around us in ways that we just don't, the average person just doesn't see.
No, not at all. I mean,
one of the things that's interesting about the IoT vision that Scott describes is, to think of it in terms of ambience, right? We have, right now, computers are things that you sit in a desk and type on, or you hold in your hand and look at. So the computer is something else, whereas what the IoT offers us is the opportunity to have ambient computing, where we're inside the computation, right? Where you've got computers, microprocessors in lots of things, and the computing's happening all around you, and you may not even be aware of it. One of my favorite examples, Scott mentioned his tracker in his car, but cars in general offer an ambient computing experience because there's dozen microprocessors, a big network, and they make everything work in the car from the power windows to the engine timing, and people are almost completely unaware of any of the computation that's happening. They just live in it. It just does something good for them. They control it with some user interface that they think is controlling the car, when in fact what it's doing when they turn the steering wheel is talking to a microprocessor, and it's turning the wheels. Right? So I think that's one of the opportunities IoT provides for us, is to have this ambient computing experience.
With all that said, I'm curious, what do you guys think is the one really big innovation that you guys are excited about? The one really big innovation that you're going, man, this is something
a game changer.
very cool that I either want to be a part of or I want to keep watching. What do you guys think? Whoever wants to go.
There's no way I have just one.
I knew I would throw you a curveball by saying one. Just pick one. I know.
Yeah, I struggle with that so hard, because there are so many different areas I track and follow that I think are all coming along so quickly. I mean, I could go from, again, these embedded devices. I mean, if I look at what Espressif has done that Intel can't do, they have maneuvered Intel.
Wow.
And they don't even own a fab. They have no ability to make semiconductors. They have designs and they're getting them fabbed out to people. And, that whole aspect of things is just, pretty crazy. And then, I could go to the aspects of AI ML and what we're seeing emerging with, text to text, text to image, and now text to movie. The other day, I just came across a whole nother technology that is 2D photos to 3D renderings of environments.
Oh, wow.
That is all being done automated with ML. And then you jump to Elon Musk and what he's doing in outer space with SpaceX and Starlink. Like, there's just so many different things like that that are just completely altering our world on a daily basis.
Isn't all that kind of touched by AI? Is AI kind of a thread in there, or is it? Or am I just smoking crack?
I don't know that it passes between all of them. Phil, you were going to say something?
I was just going to say, I don't think it's really a threat. I think it's one aspect of a future of computing that involves all of those things that Scott was talking about. From my perspective, again, I'd go back to identity as the foundation for those things, right? Having a good identity system that allows you to be in charge of your devices and things. Having, the AI working for you as opposed to something else. These are the, but I think, what Scott's describing is these are all trends that are going to impact the future state of what we do. I was just actually reading today, because of Facebook's earnings call, I was reading a blog post I wrote back in 2012 about Facebook's dominance not being inevitable or likely. Because, in 2012, everybody thought, okay, social networks, social media, that's going to be the future. And everybody was thinking about, all of our apps are going to be inside Facebook. And, that was kind of what people saw, but the world didn't go that way, right? Nope. And it's impossible to predict what's going to happen, but I think it would be foolish to think that AI, ML, IoT, Scott was talking about being able to roam across networks. Just massive connectivity in a way we haven't seen before.
Oh, yeah. It's funny as you say that. Just the announcements that Starlink has made this year. Like, I've had Starlink now in Heber for over a year. And I've got the old Gen 1 setup. Then they added roaming for RVs. Then they added marine support for boats. Then they added airline support And now they've added vehicle, anybody can get it, full motion on anywhere on the planet connectivity. All of that evolving in less than 2 years. I mean, that somebody has got to wake up at some point and realize that's not kind of just normal or, oh yeah, okay, so he did that.
This is not HughesNet version 2.
Yeah, I mean, it's some stunning innovation that's going on at a rate and velocity that is just kind of crazy.
Yeah, and then add on to that 5G networks.
Yeah.
And the opportunity we have there to essentially ditch Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I think we're going to see a time in the not too distant future when people just don't even have Wi-Fi in their homes.
Yeah.
Now, there are business models that get in the way of all of that, but Twilio is forging a different model than what the carriers have typically done, and those kind of challenges I think are going to change how we view connectivity, and that's going to feed into IoT, and I mean they all feed on each other.
I gotta ask a different. I gotta spin. I gotta take this a different way, just really quickly, because you had mentioned Facebook a couple times, and supposedly the board wants 17,000 people laid off from Facebook. Is that correct?
I don't remember the number, but
so I heard 17,000. Now, what happens? I don't have a clue how Facebook has 17,000 people to run it, but my point is, what do you do when you flood the market with 17,000 tech engineers? I don't know who they're exactly they're laying off, but what does that do to a space that's already kind of teetering on difficulty of jobs and finding them? And do you think it will have an impact, or it's not a big deal? They're all going to find jobs. I'm just curious, since we talked about that. I'm curious what you guys think.
Let me give you some perspective. I just Googled it. Facebook has about 60,000 employees. So if your number's right, that's about 27%, something like that of Facebook employees. Now I don't know where they all live, right? I presume a big number of them live in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Oh. Amazon has 1.6 million employees.
Wow.
What?
I don't think I knew that.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, Amazon's doing something.
I mean,
they're giving packages.
So this is, I've worked in all kinds of different places, public places, private places, public companies, government. I've worked all kinds of different places. This is the first time I've worked for a company this big. I mean, there aren't very many companies this big, right? But one of the things that's been interesting about working at Amazon is just how many people they have doing how many different things. There are just so many different things that are being worked on. I mean, before I started at Amazon, I don't think I could have imagined how many different teams there are working on tiny little problems. Tiny in the sense of, when you're doing a startup, I've done some startups. When you're doing a startup, you're responsible for everything. Right? I mean, you got to worry about the sales and the marketing and the engineering and everything. I mean, they've got people just focusing on one little thing, and or a team of people. So how does that relate to your question? I mean, I guess my point is, there are, Facebook's a big company, 60,000 employees, laying off, quarter to 1/3 of their employees is a big deal. But if those employees are good, they're just going to get scraped up by other companies.
I mean, I either think that, or maybe they'll end up.
I don't think, if you were laying off a bunch of, I don't want to pick on auto workers, but that's the only thing that comes to mind. If you're laying off a bunch of auto workers and there's no other factories being built, then you say, what are all these people going to do? We're going to have to retrain them. You're laying off a whole bunch of tech company employees in an ecosystem that's just so hungry for programmers that nobody can get enough of them. I don't think it's a big deal at all.
Well, I think it will be.
Well, let me first, before you go on, Scott, let me clarify that. I mean, it's obviously a big deal for the people who are getting laid off, right? Yes. That's it's always traumatic when that happens. I have been laid off. I've laid people off, and what I mean is, in the overall ecosystem standpoint, it's going to get just lapped up.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's what I was going to say. Is the industry's looking for talent So as long as the people have talent, they'll be lapped
They'll
up
be
by
fine.
some other organization. I do think that it's also overall these kind of things that strengthen the overall system, right? Back in the day at Novell, Ray Norder would do layoffs every 6 months just to get rid of the deadwood. And so, this is going to put a bunch of people out there that are going to have to fight for the positions that are available. It's a tough time and you feel for them. But, I think there's a lot of people who picked up jobs in some of these hiring sprees that, probably got in pretty easy, pretty highly paid. And were they really, delivering on that revenue? And so it's an interesting one.
It is. And having said that, I mean, I'm going to kind of go back to a couple previous comments that you guys made in terms of like connectivity and things of that nature. Adobe has an annual event called Adobe Summit, which is for their marketing technology division. And this was probably a few years back. They were debuting the fact that you could actually be walking down the street and have personalized ads tailored to you for different vendors. I think the one they did at the moment was like either Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts, to where you could be walking by.
I hope that was either on Halloween or April 1st, because that sounds just absolutely nightmarish.
Right. So having said that, that's where I was going to get your guys' take. I mean, do you think that's good? Do you think that's bad? Does that play into the IoT side of things? Help me understand that a little bit more.
Gosh.
Well, I'll go since Scott's thinking. So I think that the current way we've built out what we euphemistically call Web 2.0 it was built to sustain exactly that kind of experience. And that experience is built for the benefit of the companies, not the people who use their products. And, I think that what we have right now is not bad. I mean, it's not awful, right? I mean, I like using all these products and services, but it's like an amusement park, right? I don't want to live 24/7 in an amusement park. I like to visit amusement parks sometimes, but I want to live an authentic life. And as more and more of my life goes online, I want ways of living authentic digital lives. Excuse me, having authentic digital relationships that don't require that I be logged into somewhere. Let me give you one of my favorite examples. Let's say you went to a restaurant in the physical world to meet a friend for lunch. You walk in, the hostess greets you, you find your table, you read the menu, you and your friend discuss options, you have a conversation, right? The waiter comes up and asks you questions. You have all of these interactions. Not once did you ever log into any system. No one had to identify you. No one had to put you in their system or push ads at you. None of that had to happen in order for you to have an authentic experience at a restaurant with your friend. We don't have any way of doing that online right now. Well, we do kind of, but not widely spread out. And that's the problem. We cannot live authentic digital lives online. We are always within someone else's administrative system, and that means that we're always within their bureaucracy, their rules, what they decide is good. If they want to push ads at us, we just take the ads. We don't get to make any of those decisions because we're using their system. So anyway, that's my spiel. I could go on for like a book length, maybe. About this.
I was going to say, I mean, the thing that's interesting to me is that there's a lot of old, valuable concepts that I think are lost on modern generations in technology. Like, if you were to think of an editor of a newspaper back in the day, part of that person's job was to put a mix of content in that newspaper that might be things you didn't ask for. And so you would learn, you would expand your horizons, because you would get a newspaper and all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow, Tahiti. I never read about Tahiti to really know about Tahiti. If these systems continue to funnel you down a tunnel of only the things they feel that you are interested in, sort of like You go on Amazon or on Google and you do the search because you need a new lawnmower, and then you buy the lawnmower, and then you keep getting inundated with ads for lawnmowers. Like, what good is that? And I'll kind of tie in one recent experience. Last week I went to envelopes.com. I'm going to call them out on this because they could fix this. And I ordered some envelopes, and they added me to their email spam list, where they started to spam me every day or other day with an email of, here's a coupon code and our specials and do this. And I'm thinking, people, I did not come buy envelopes from you ever before. I just bought them. Why do you think I want to be reminded as though I buy envelopes every day? Now, if they wanted to
Isn't that the core of your
advertise,
very existence, Scott?
it-
Your
it's
very
like, yeah,
existence centers around envelopes, right?
That's funny.
even if they wanted to send me an email once a month, I might tolerate it. But instead, I unsubscribed because it's like, I don't want to hear it. And so when I look at these systems, I think there's a lot of immature, sort of unicorn, rainbow, and candy cotton mentality around the way it's thought of like, gosh, we'll fine tune these ads and pepper people and generate all this money. We'll all become billionaires and we all retire and it's all done, game over. And I don't buy that. I don't think it's what people want.
I tend to agree. We're humans, and we're a little more complicated mentally than getting us down to an algorithm. And
Well,
I'm the same
and
way.
like Phil said, if it truly was providing you or I the value, then it would be acceptable. So if it wasn't about the company but was about us,
Yeah.
then it truly would be of value, and I don't think it would be as annoying.
Yeah. Originally, I was like, well, why? What's wrong with if they know what I want? What's wrong with always seeing what I want? But as it happens, it's interesting.
It's more and more like,
and then it's not what I want, and then I go on my wife's computer, and it's so weird because it's like it's a different experience, and I see different things, and I'm like, whoa, this is wow. I might like that.
Disneyland to Six Flags.
The popcorn's cheaper here. What's going on?
Interesting.
Yeah, this is good stuff.
So there's a great book about this called The Surveillance Economy by Shoshana Zuboff that I recommend people read about how we've built the internet around surveillance. And, I don't necessarily agree with her prescriptions because I think you can summarize them as make the big tech companies even bigger so that they can police what happens. I don't think that's a good solution, but her understanding of the problem, I think, is really important. And she's a great writer. I mean, it's just a pleasure to read what she writes. So
I love it.
Cool.
Okay, I want to ask, or you want to ask this question?
No, go ahead. It's on
Okay.
you.
All right. Well, and I'm going to change it up because that's what we do. We like it. It's our show. We can do whatever we want, right? Right. So what do you guys think about the future as far as technology goes? What are you guys seeing? What are you feeling? What is some profiting things going on here that you guys are thinking about the future?
I'm glad I'm old and I'll die soon.
That's not cynical at all.
There is an aspect of that, Phil.
I mean, I'm saying that, a little bit tongue in cheek, but I mean, there are some parts of the future that, could be pretty scary. There are parts that could be really interesting. I mean, it never comes out like you think it will.
True.
Yeah,
Well,
I agree.
I think Tony Robbins said that if you can just live 20 more years, they'll have lifespan figured out and you can live, 200 years.
Yeah.
Well, on your question and Phil's comment, the thing that gets me is I don't even know it's the technology. It's almost like people just aren't keeping up with it. There's so little awareness of what is going on behind our backs, in the cell phones, in the cell networks, in the data centers of Facebook and Google and Apple. And everyone wants to have this, opinion of, oh, well, mine is good, but the other one is bad. And things like that. And I'd almost look at it and say, no, they're all bad. Like they're all doing things as entities out for themselves that start to prey on people. And that's the one thing, not to be pessimistic. I love technology. I love things like seeing us expanding and going on to other planets, or technology that really can help us. But I see projects like when you were talking about Facebook versus like Matrix. If you've seen matrix.org, it is a completely decentralized, encrypted, network system that is a step beyond email, that people could be adopting and promoting, but it just doesn't get the attention. Nobody's aware of it, and nobody quite knows why they should be supporting it or asking for it. And so there's good technological solutions, but I don't know that there are people asking for them or supporting them.
Well, why do you think that is, though? I'm just curious on why do you think there's no education or adaptation to
I don't think it's about education. I mean, everybody shouldn't have to understand how the internet works in order to use the internet, and they don't, right? I mean, lots of people use the internet every day without any idea at all about how it works. That doesn't mean they wouldn't be better off if they didn't understand a little bit more. But I think the biggest problems that we have, I think, stem from centralization in places where we shouldn't have centralization. And there are economics that drive that, right? I mean, economies of scale are real. Now, one thing I would recommend to people is that they go look for a TED Talk by Jeffrey West, that's Jeffrey with a G, about the economics of cities versus networks. I don't think that's the actual title, but that'll get you close enough, I think. Because he talks about the relative economics of decentralized systems versus hierarchical systems, or heterarchical systems, peer-to-peer systems versus hierarchical systems. And, the economies of scale are real things, but they also have bad economies of scale. I mean, just in the same way that if you make a company twice as big, you now get, economies of scale. It's about 0.15, 15% better almost everything. You also get about 0.15 worse everything, right? Communication, interaction, all of those things. And companies spend lots of time trying to overcome that friction and figure it out, right? So on the other hand, if you look at like a city, right, which is more hierarchical, you get a completely different, you get a super scalar economy of scale. Now, that's good too, because as you double the size of a city, you get a lot more innovation. You also get a lot more crime. Mm-hmm. So there's no panacea. There's no good and bad. Both models have good and bad things. There, Scott put the link in. You can put that in the show notes, maybe. So my point here is that I think we need to move further away from hierarchical systems online and more towards heterarchical and peer-to-peer. Some of the things I talked about earlier, decentralized identity, is one way to do that, right? It's not a subject we could cover in a few minutes, but the point is that we are not digitally embodied. We are not peers online. We are always acting within someone else's system and under their rules. We need ways to be online without being in someone else's system. So that like I said, we don't, a few minutes isn't going to do that justice. But my point here is that we need to find ways of having more decentralization in how we operate online. Now, that's a big ask. And in fact, I think that the internet was in many ways a happy accident. There are so many decentralized systems that people have tried and have failed for lots of reasons. Right? I mean, people with the Elon Musk purchasing Twitter, people are all talking about Mastodon, right? But the very reason that they're leaving Twitter because Elon Musk is going to do away with, supposedly, I mean, this is all what people suppose, do away with moderation. Mastodon doesn't have any moderation because it's a completely decentralized system. And so, like I said, there are good and bad aspects of all of this, but I think we have to move away from the administrative web-based systems we have now to something that is more hierarchical or peer-to-peer.
But isn't it simpler? Maybe. I mean, my thought is, isn't it just about money? I mean, I look at the turn of the century Tesla. You know, he had some cool ideas of things to do, but when he was asked how to monetize it, they were all like, he's like, hey, what do you mean monetize? I'm going to give free internet. This is going to be great. And the world said, well, that's not going to work because we got to make money. I kind of see that technology is halted so many times because of monetary things. Am I smoking crack or?
I don't want to hog the conversation, but I'll give you an unpopular opinion here. I think the internet succeeded because it was a decentralized system that had a way of transferring value from the edge of the network to the center of the network, and that was called telecom companies. Right. So what you just said is spot on.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of people try to build decentralized networks without any way of transferring value built into them, and because of that, they ultimately end up being some form of altruism. And there's nothing wrong with altruism, but it doesn't build.
Can't keep it going.
I mean, in the case of the internet, somebody had to actually buy routers and lay cables, but that cost real money.
Yep.
And it didn't just happen by accident, right? It was because people could make money doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah, 100%. Whoa, this is good stuff.
No, this is really good
stuff. This has been fun. Wow. All right. Well, can we need to kind of wrap it up. I know we all got hard stops and stuff. Do you guys any last words from Scott or Phil? Just your last 2 cents for the new IT.
You know, I don't know. I would say overall, I do tend to be an optimist, and I think I'm looking forward to watching things continue to unfold. But as Phil was saying, I do think we're probably still in for more and more surprises of the unanticipated, impacts of a lot of what's going on. You know, there's always it's the person who loves being on their cell phone until they fall into the fountain, stuck looking at it, right? And so, yeah, I just love to see what's going on out there, and there is a lot of disruption in so many different areas, and it's kind of a fun ride.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah.
Phil.
Yeah. Despite my earlier comment about being glad that I would be dead in a few years and wouldn't have to see what happened, I am like Scott, generally an optimist, and I tend to think that we'll figure this stuff out, and the future is probably full of wonderful surprises.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Brad.
No, I mean, I think these guys kind of summed it up. I mean, I want to talk to them more. I want to get their thoughts
I think
on
we
a
could
lot
be
more.
here a while.
Maybe that's.
Well, I'll give you one last book reference before we close.
Perfect.
And that's Rainbow's End.
So
Rainbow's
say
End
that again.
is a fiction book, Rainbow's End. It's a fiction book by Werner Vinge about a guy who was a famous poet, and he gets Alzheimer's and is put in a home, and they come up with a cure for it. And so he wakes up years later in this world that he doesn't recognize. And, it's just full of, what I like about it is it's not dystopian and it's not utopian. It is predicting a future world and all of the things that come about because we made choices 20 years ago about something, and now what's going to happen. Anyway, I think it's a wonderful book for exploring these thoughts.
Yeah,
cool.
Definitely a good one.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's great.
I'm always looking for a new read. So good. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you guys for being on the show. I think we got some cool insight.
Absolutely.
This was really, really good.
I think we're definitely going to have them on again, though. This is only just
we just cut the surface of this stuff, man. I love it. Well, thank you for listening, and everybody out there, thank you for listening to the new IT. We'll see you next time.